Welcome to Monsters, Maybe, the podcast, the official deep dive companion to Wilson H. Bard's Monsters Maybe series. Each episode, two voices sit down to pick apart one book or one big idea from the world of Wall-E, Medusa, and the monsters who might not be monsters at all. Before we get into it, two quick things. First, the voices you're about to hear in this discussion are AI generated, built to walk through the Monsters Maybe world in conversation form. Second, this is a full spoiler discussion. We cover complete plot details, twists, and endings from across the Monsters Maybe series. If you haven't read the books yet, consider this your spoiler warning.
Usually, when we look at ancient Greek pottery, those really stark black and orange clay vases sitting under halogen lights in a museum, there's this overwhelming expectation of rigid categorization.
Oh, absolutely. It's very much designed that way.
Right. It's almost like looking at an ancient form of action figures. You look at the curvature of the vase, and on one side there's the hero with a sword, muscles perfectly defined, just standing in a pose of righteous triumph.
And right across from him is the hulking, terrifying monster, all fangs and chaotic energy.
Exactly. And the curator points to the little placard next to the display case and essentially says, there it is, good versus evil. Civilization versus savagery.
Yeah, it's an incredibly clean binary. It's designed to be easily digestible for you. You don't have to wonder who you're supposed to root for when the lines are drawn that clearly.
Hero or monster, predator or prey. We like things to be visible, to be easily categorized into boxes. It's a comforting way to look at the world, really.
It is, and it's how these myths have been handed down to us for millennia.
But then you step into the world of this specific deep dive, and suddenly that pristine museum display case it's completely shattered.
Oh, totally smashed to pieces.
We're looking at a mythological landscape today that is wonderfully, deliberately murky. The source material we're pulling from completely flips that black and orange pottery narrative on its head.
It really does. We are diving deep into this brilliant novel titled Macramé Owls Encores by Kenny C.H.
And crucially, we aren't just looking at the published text, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have an incredibly rare internal document to pair with it, which is just amazing.
Yes, the Monsters Maybe Principal Cast Guide.
Which is an absolute goldmine. It gives you a peek into the futures of these characters that the text itself only hints at, and it entirely shifts how you read the trajectory of the story.
It changes everything. Our mission today is to unpack a narrative that takes the most terrifying, bloodthirsty monsters of the ancient world and, reimagines them as deeply misunderstood practicing artists.
Right. And we're going to contrast their rather peaceful, idiosyncratic lives with the brutal, mundane tyranny of human rulers.
And finally, we'll trace this thrilling, high-stakes story of an ensemble of enslaved children who use their daily chores to orchestrate a rebellion right under the nose of a tyrant.
The tension between what we've been culturally programmed to expect from these famous mythological names and what they're actually doing in Kenny C.H.'s story is just delightful.
It is, but it's also a profound commentary on who gets to write history,
Exactly. We are going to look at how a bloodthirsty Manitor is actually a vegan theater kid.
Which is just the best reveal.
It's so good. And how a blind flower seller wandering the streets of Athens is secretly destined to become the Queen of Crete. But to kick us off, we need to establish the ground rules of this universe.
Right, the foundation.
Yeah. So how exactly does this author take the most feared creatures of the ancient world and turn them into the most relatable characters in the room?
Well, it starts with the underlying philosophy of the book, which the author actually spells out right at the beginning.
Oh, the quote.
Yes. Before Chapter 1, there is an epigraph by Ishiro Honda. And for those who don't know, Honda is the legendary Japanese filmmaker who directed the original 1954 Godzilla.
A master of monsters.
Exactly. And the quote chosen is this: "Monsters are tragic beings. They are born too tall, too strong, too heavy. They are not evil by choice. That is their tragedy."
I want to pause on that for a second because that quote just hits incredibly hard for you as a reader. Not evil by choice.
It immediately frames everything we're about to read. It completely dismantles the classic tropes of myth and fantasy.
Right, because think about traditional mythology. In those stories, a monster's physical form dictates their morality, basically.
Absolutely. If you look terrifying, if you have snake hair or the head of a bull, you must inherently be terrifying. Your biology is your destiny.
But Kenny C.H. uses that Honda quote to separate their physical forms from their internal desires.
Right. These beings are still physically imposing. They're still tall, strong, and heavy. But their choices, their inner lives, are entirely divorced from their appearance.
Let's start with Medusa, because she is really the emotional anchor of this entire concept. Medusa is traditionally the ultimate apex predator, right?
But yeah, the shrieking Gorgon, lurking in a cave, turning brave, handsome men to stone with a single malevolent glance.
She's the obstacle Perseus has to overcome to prove his manhood.
Right. But in this story, she isn't a predator at all. She is this reclusive, slightly prickly, highly stressed artist living on a wind-whipped spit of rock called Misty Island.
And she literally runs a storefront.
Yes, it's called Misty Island Exports, and it specializes in fine garden and lawn statues for wealthy Asian buyers.
And the statues are just the heroes who try to sneak onto her island to kill her.
Exactly.
When I first read that, I literally had to put the book down. It was such a brilliant, darkly comedic detail.
It really is. Her victims are just trespassers. She doesn't hunt them. They show up uninvited with swords drawn, and she turns them to stone in pure self-defense.
And then she uses them as lawn ornaments.
Yeah.
Or, sells them off to fund her real passion.
Which is macrame and weaving. That is her true obsession.
Yeah, the text gives us this incredible backstory where she learned the craft from a blind monk at the Temple of Athena years ago.
It started small, right? With these little macrame owls. She has dozens of them staring out from the walls of her cottage with these lopsided, uneven eyes.
But it evolved. Now she is creating these massive, intricate tapestries. The imagery is so vivid she is hunched over a low, sturdy work table, wearing thick spectacles pushed up on her nose.
Just carefully stitching seafoam-colored glass gems into a tapestry the size of a barn door.
And she is a total diva about her supplies, which I love. She's complaining to her assistant, a young blind girl named Laura, about the supply chain issues.
Right, she's stressing over a lack of proper copper thread and fussing over the exact specifications of 27-point aquamarine star beads.
I love the image of her snakes, too. These legendary venomous vipers are just hissing softly, nudging her ear or coiling anxiously when she's stressed about a looming commission deadline.
Yeah, she's not a monster. She's just a tired small business owner dealing with difficult clients.
It humanizes her so much, but it also gives her profound agency. She isn't just sitting in a cave waiting for a hero to arrive so her story can begin.
Exactly. She has a life, a business, and a creative drive. But to really understand the scope of what the author is doing, we have to look at how this idea scales. We have to talk about Wally.
Oh, Wally. The Minotaur.
Yeah.
The legendary beast of the labyrinth.
Except his real name is Walden Van Hoofingtonsworth III.
Which is just incredible.
And he is this flamboyant, highly trained, former theater star. He graduated from the Julius Yard Conservatory, if you can believe it.
I mean, he tells everyone who will listen that he used to tour in a hit musical called The Beast and Bowel's Brother.
Right. We are so primed by thousands of years of culture to expect this flesh-eating, roaring beast trapped in a maze, and we find out he is vegan.
He is literally the Athens chapter co-chair of a group called Broadway Fights Beef.
It's so funny.
But, I have to push back a little here, because when I was reading this section, I found myself wondering about the tone.
Okay, how so?
Well, making the terrifying Minotaur a vegan theater kid, doesn't that risk turning a classical epic into a cartoon? Like, how does the author maintain any actual stakes or tension if the big bad monster is just practicing vocal warm-ups and worrying about his diet?
That is a phenomenal question, and it's the exact trap the author wants you to briefly fall into.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The stakes aren't ruined, they are redirected. The fear in the story doesn't come from the monster, it comes from the system that forces the monster into a cage.
Oh, wow. Okay, that makes sense.
Minos' power is basically like a fiat currency. It only has value because everyone agrees to be terrified of it. Minos needs the Minotaur to be a monster to excuse his own monstrous executions.
Right. Because if Wally's entire existence in the maze is dedicated to staging fake deaths to avoid spilling blood, it forces you to ask a deeply uncomfortable question about the man who ordered the maze built in the first place.
Precisely. Wally doesn't see himself as a killer. To Wally, the labyrinth is just a stage. It's a permanent, albeit involuntary, theatrical residency.
That's such a great way to put it.
He uses his acting genius to fake the deaths of the people sent into the maze. He has built a secret dressing room down there, filled with plush seating, silks, armor, and crowns.
And the mannequins. We can't forget the mannequins.
Oh, yes.
He has these highly articulated dummies with collapsible joints and concealed seams. He uses them to stage these brutal-looking deaths for the nobles who watch the maze from the grates above.
And he uses sunberry jam for fake blood.
Yes, he goes on this wonderful rant about how sunberry jam has, quote, excellent viscosity and reads beautifully from a distance.
It's brilliant. He is giving the bloodthirsty nobles a completely convincing show without ever actually hurting anyone because, well, as he admits, he faints at the sight of blood.
So the horror isn't the Minotaur. The horror is that a political system is forcing an innocent theater kid to act as a state executioner.
Exactly. And notice the recurring theme here. Art and craftsmanship. This extends to the other creatures in the world as well.
Right, the author pairs Medusa and Wally, who use their art to subvert violence, with other mythological figures who use their passions differently, like Pegasus, or Gus, as he prefers to be called.
Gus is amazing. He is this massive diva businessman running a wing-wax empire from a pristine, well-lit studio on Mount Olympus.
He's just so full of himself, but in a fun way.
Gus represents ego, but in a highly creative, modern way. He's constantly surrounded by sculptors trying to capture his magnificence on stone tablets.
And he is endlessly complaining about the ambient lighting and refusing to break his pose.
But more importantly, he actively rewrites human mythology.
Yes, I love the part where he tells a young aspiring hero that Perseus, the great, legendary Perseus, actually missed his target 3 times and was plagued by crippling self-doubt.
Right, Gus claims he had to physically adjust Perseus's angle from the air, otherwise there would be no legend.
He literally says, the difference between legend and failure is often guidance. He completely deflates the myth of the flawless human hero, taking credit for the success himself.
And then, contrasting Gus's massive ego, we have the Cyclops.
Oh, Sai just breaks my heart.
He represents pure innocence. He is a gentle giant acting as a shepherd on a remote island. He is so fiercely protective of his sheep that when merchant ships get too close, he throws massive boulders into the sea and yells, "No, take sheeps!"
But the text explicitly notes that he calculates the trajectory to intentionally miss the ships. He just wants to scare them away, not actually hurt anyone.
Shai's storyline is genuinely moving. We see him in his cave, trying to tie knots on these little brown boxes because he's sending gifts to his friends Medusa, Wally, and Gus.
And the gifts are objectively terrible because he is so massive and clumsy.
They are disastrous. He sends Gus rainbow glitter wing warmers,
Which Gus predictably calls utterly ghastly because metallics are in season, obviously.
obviously. But the best one is what he sends to Medusa.
Oh, the crocheted mask.
Yeah.
With 12 mismatched sleeves. Because he was trying to make individual sleeves for her snakes.
It's just so sweet. We learn that Medusa actually taught him how to crochet using sharpened boat oars as needles.
And when she opens this chaotic, tangled mask, she just softly traces the yarn and says, "This is an improvement."
It's such a quiet, tender moment between two beings the world considers abhorrent.
It really culminates in Sai's birthday party, a party he throws entirely for himself in his cave.
Oh, don't remind me. It's so sad.
He hangs wet seaweed from the ceiling as streamers, makes little uneven namestones for his friends who aren't there, and even makes one for his delivery vulture, Virgil.
And then he stands alone in the damp cave singing "Happy Birthday, Dear Me" to himself. It's profoundly lonely. But it underscores the tragedy Honda talked about. He is just a lonely guy who wants friends, but he is trapped in a body that the world fears.
So if we pull all of this together, the macrame, the theater, the wing wax modeling, the terrible crochet, what is the author doing here? Why art?
That's the big question.
Yeah, like why make the Minotaur a theater nerd and the Gorgon a macrame enthusiast instead of just making them, I don't know, misunderstood softies who like to read or look at sunsets?
It comes back to the concept of narrative control, which is the beating heart of this novel. In classical myth, humans write the stories. And when humans write the stories, they reduce these beings to mindless beasts.
They strip them of their interiority, their desires, their fears.
Exactly. They make them flat, physical threats whose only purpose is to be conquered. By making them artists and craftsmen, Kenny C.H. gives them ultimate agency.
Because art is the highest form of expression.
Right. It is how you leave a mark on the world that says, I was here and I had a perspective.
They aren't just existing in the background of a human hero's story. They are actively shaping their own environments. They are the protagonists of their own internal lives.
Precisely. Sai's terrible crochet, Medusa's intricate tapestries, Wally's set design, and Gus's modeling, these are all acts of creation. Myths portray them as engines of destruction, but here, they are the creators.
They are trying to beautify a world that constantly labels them as ugly and monstrous. That is a massive paradigm shift.
It absolutely is.
But it leaves us with a glaring question. If the monsters are the peaceful creators, the ones making tapestries and hoarding sunberry jam, who are the real monsters in this story?
Well, there is definitely evil in this world. There is violence and cruelty. It's just wearing a different face.
Right. The author draws a stark, unforgiving contrast between the so-called monsters and the human rulers.
The prime example of this, the true antagonist of the narrative, is King Minos. He is referred to throughout the text as the Gilded Boy King of Crete, and he is the absolute embodiment of human tyranny.
Minos is terrifying, precisely because he isn't a roaring beast. He is terrifying because he is bored, vain, and completely detached from the value of human life.
We see this early scene where he is lounging across his massive marble throne, idly peeling grapes, and treating brutal state executions like they are just mildly amusing dinner theater.
He sentences people to the labyrinth for the most incredibly minor offenses.
It highlights the capriciousness of absolute power. At one point, he is looking over a ledger of names slated for execution.
Oh, this part is so messed up.
It really is. He decides to keep a certain provincial governor on the list simply because the governor's daughter always faints at the good bits during the arena executions, and Minos finds her fainting entertaining.
It is pure sadism, disguised as aristocratic boredom. And look at how he treats Daedalus, his master architect.
Poor Daedalus.
He comes into the throne room exhausted, covered in ink, his hands shaking, begging the king to stop changing the blueprints for the maze.
Minos is making impossible demands. He wants curved staircases leading to dead ends, hidden mirrors to confuse the victims, gold leaf on the stone walls.
And he wants entire quadrants of the maze flipped, simply so he can view the Minotaur in the early morning light from his balcony.
When Daedalus tries to explain the structural impossibility of these demands, Minos doesn't argue architecture. He just vaguely, coldly threatens to throw Daedalus into the maze himself.
What's vital for you to understand here is the nature of Minos' power. It is fundamentally hollow.
Exactly. Minos doesn't build anything himself. He doesn't create. He forces Daedalus to build. He unknowingly forces Wally to perform. He is a parasite.
He feeds off the creativity and the grueling labor of others to manufacture an aura of fear.
He literally says to an advisor, "You can't buy fear like this, you build it." But he isn't building it. He's just demanding it at sword point.
This is where the contrast becomes mind-blowing. Let's compare Minos' palace to Medusa's cottage.
A huge difference.
Right. Medusa's home is filled with tea, thread, and quiet creation. Her inventory of stonemen in the yard is entirely made up of aggressive warriors who came to her island with swords drawn, intending to murder her for glory. She doesn't hunt them.
Her actions are purely defensive. She is reacting to human aggression.
Exactly. Meanwhile, King Minos literally imports people from across the realm. He seizes merchant ships, he drags citizens out of their homes, he rips families apart, just to throw them into a maze to watch them die for his own afternoon amusement.
If we are defining a monster by their actions, the humans are unequivocally the apex predators here.
And the author doesn't just isolate this cruelty to the untouchable ruling class, right? We see the mundane, everyday human cruelty down on the streets of Athens as well.
The system of exploitation absolutely trickles down. You're talking about the thugs in the market. Big Bird, Perry, and Dim.
Yes, those guys.
Yeah.
They are not grand, mythological villains with master plans. They are just greedy, ignorant, opportunistic bullies.
They spot Elara, Medusa's blind assistant, buying expensive supplies in the market.
The silks, the copper thread, the 27-point aquamarine beads.
Right. They look at a vulnerable, blind teenager holding expensive goods, and they immediately assume she works for some wealthy, unprotected patron.
They kidnap her. They throw a blind girl into the back of a stinking livestock wagon just to extort money.
It's the banality of evil. But the execution of this scene is brilliant because they're so painfully incompetent, and Elara is so much smarter than they are.
Oh, she totally outclasses them. She is blind, her hands are bound, but she doesn't panic.
She slowly loosens her rope bindings and secretly drops a trail of those highly specific, very expensive aquamarine star beads out the back of the wagon, knowing Medusa will be able to track them.
When they finally get her to their hideout, which is just this rotting, half-collapsed barn, Elara takes complete psychological control of the situation simply by stalling them.
She spins this wild, fabricated story about her employer's compound. She tells them it's on a fortified island with 27 rotating guards, imported Tasmanian tigers.
And passphrases in a made-up language. And the thugs are so greedy and gullible, they spend hours trying to draw a map based on her lies.
The scene with Dim in the corner chewing his lip, holding a piece of charcoal, trying to draw this map, and mislabeling the same river twice. It's hilarious.
But the humor overlays a very real, very dark tension. Because eventually Big Bird realizes they are being played.
And when his ego is bruised, he immediately draws his sword. He is fully prepared to murder a blind child in a dirty barn just because she outsmarted him.
They don't choose violence for grand, tragic reasons. They choose it for a few coins and a bruised ego.
Which perfectly validates the Ishiru Honda epigraph. Compare the monster's tragedy with this human cruelty.
The monsters act only to survive, to defend their peaceful isolation. Minos chooses evil on a massive scale for entertainment, and the thugs choose violence on a petty scale for money.
The text is very clear on who possesses true humanity.
Of course, Medusa tracks the aquamarine beads. She shows up at the barn in her heavy travel cloaks. She tells them to hand over the girl.
And Big Bird, arrogant to the end, mocks her.
So she pulls back her cowl, snake's flare, and she delivers the coldest line in the book.
Oh, it's so good.
She says, "Gaze upon me, but see yourself as you are now and as you will be forever, a prisoner of your own hatred and rage."
And boom, 3 new, terrified-looking stone statues for the Aegean line of Misty Island exports.
It's a deeply satisfying resolution to that specific conflict, but it highlights the core thematic premise. Human tyranny, whether it's a king on a throne or a thug in an alley, creates a highly dangerous environment for the vulnerable.
And nowhere in this world is that pressure cooker more intense, more deadly than inside King Minos' palace.
Which brings us to the real heart of the narrative.
Yeah.
The children of the palace. The enslaved ensemble.
Right. How do they survive when their lives mean absolutely nothing to the boy king?
This is where that internal document, the Monsters Maybe Principal Cast Guide, becomes completely invaluable for you. It shows us that these aren't just background characters. They are the architects of the future.
The cast guide fundamentally transforms how we view these kids. While we are reading about them scrubbing floors and peeling potatoes, the guide tells us we're actually watching the origin stories of the future leaders of this world.
Let's look at the ensemble, starting with Kalela.
Kalela is the practical, grounded leader of the group. She works in the boiling, suffocating heat of the royal kitchens under the tyrannical head cook, Yaya Thessa.
Kalea is the strategist.
And her character is defined by a profound, unhealed trauma. She was taken as a spoil of war nearly a decade ago, along with her infant sister, Lena.
Kala still remembers her village burning down. She remembers the smell of the smoke and the shouting of Minos' soldiers. That memory fuels everything she does.
The text notes she tried to fit in at the Temple of Athena for a while, seeking some kind of peace, but she got reassigned to the kitchens for turning sacred, somber verses into upbeat dance numbers.
She uses humor and movement to deflect pain. But beneath that exterior, she is constantly planning. She is the watcher.
And then there's Lena, her younger sister. Lena is described in the cast guide with a very specific phrase: fearless youngest member of the ensemble and future organizer.
She doesn't remember the village burning, so she doesn't have Kala's inherent caution. She is incredibly graceful, light on her feet, but her fearlessness is what ultimately acts as the catalyst for the story's climax.
Alongside the sisters, we have Bryn, the golden-haired stable boy. Bryn was snatched from a merchant ship that was boarded and seized by Minos' warships.
Minos only kept him alive and brought him to the palace because Bryn's physical appearance, his striking golden hair and bright gray eyes, was viewed by the court astrologers as a lucky omen.
He is kept as a human good luck charm.
But Bryn is the one who keeps the dream of freedom alive for the group. He remembers a life before captivity. He remembers these old sailor songs his crew used to sing about a place called Pelagon's Retreat.
It's described as a place beyond the Shield Coast where there are no kings, where chains are melted down into keys and people govern themselves.
He sings these songs in the dark to keep their spirits up. And the cast guide notes his future title as co-owner of the Sentenced Sisters, which sounds like it might be a tavern or a rebel ship down the line.
He is destined for freedom. And finally, rounding out the core group, there is Eppo.
Ah, Eppo.
Eppo is the illegitimate son of a late royal concubine. He has been relegated to the status of a palace runner and an assistant scholar.
Because he is a courier, he has virtually unrestricted access to the palace. No one looks twice at a boy carrying scrolls.
And the cast guide drops an absolute bombshell regarding Eppo. He isn't just a runner, he is the hidden prince and eventual king of Phonios.
He is literally the blood heir to the throne he is desperately trying to escape.
When we look at how these four operate together, we see how their deeply individual traumas shape their collective fight for survival.
Because Bryn lost his original crew on that merchant ship, he is fiercely, violently protective of this new crew.
Because Kala remembers the freedom of her village before she was taken, she is the one logically organizing the escape.
They operate as a deeply connected, synchronized hive mind. They have this whole covert communication system that relies on the architecture of their servitude.
Right, like when they need an emergency meeting, Lena, during her cleaning rounds, extinguishes candles 3 and 5 in the upper pantry window.
It's a visual signal that can be seen from the stables where Bryn works and the alchemist's lab where Eppo runs errands.
They gather in a dusty, abandoned supply room in the sub-basement to plot. But the reality is, they are children. They don't have weapons, they don't have swords, shields, or armor.
What they have is their daily craftsmanship. And this is where the author's theme of creation as resistance truly shines. Let's delve into the mechanics of this because it's a brilliant execution of asymmetrical warfare.
It really is.
I want to focus on that phrase, asymmetrical warfare. How exactly does that work in this context?
Asymmetrical warfare, at its core, is about a smaller, weaker force using the larger force's size, bureaucracy, and assumptions against them.
Right.
Minos has a massive standing army, elite guards, and impenetrable stone walls, but he also has a massive blind spot: his arrogance. Minos, and by extension his entire court, doesn't see servants as people.
To the ruling class, a servant is just an extension of the broom they push or the silver tray they carry. They are a part of the furniture.
Which makes them invisible. And that invisibility is the greatest tactical advantage the children possess. Every mundane chore they perform is secretly co-opted for the rebellion.
The logistics of this are incredible. Let's break down exactly how they do this. Eppo uses his daily courier routes as an intelligence-gathering network.
He intentionally lingers when delivering scrolls to the architects, listening to them complain to Daedalus about the construction schedules.
Because of this, he knows exactly which corridors of the maze will be empty of workers on which days.
He uses his access to the shipping clerk's desk to steal a manifest, locating a ship called the Wayward Gull that is leaving for the Strait.
He even pilfers highly volatile fire oil drop by drop from his half-brother's alchemy lab while cleaning the beakers.
And Lena weaponizes her small size and her specific duties. She delivers breakfast trays to the upper levels, which allows her to access restricted areas.
She systematically steals linen strips and long-burning candles from a fourth-floor storage cabinet right under the nose of the head steward.
And most importantly, she uses her time scrubbing the floors near the laundry chutes to figure out how to reach her skinny arm through the iron grate and slowly loosen the lock plate from the inside.
It's just genius. Then there's Bryn, who weaponizes the stables. He uses his stable boy tools, a heavy hammer, and an iron pry bar to discreetly unseal ventilation covers and secure hidden access points throughout the lower levels of the palace.
He is outside constantly, so he tracks the guard patrols. He notes their human habits, like exactly when they swap shifts, when they take smoke breaks, and when they leave the rear pier post completely empty for 3 minutes every night.
And Gala acts as the central command. She uses the sheer deafening chaos of the royal kitchen to hide their movements and their stolen cache of supplies.
She leverages her role delivering hot lunches to the dungeon guards to scout the sub-basement doors and map the escape route.
You know, when you look at your own daily routine, the spreadsheets, the endless emails, the mundane chores, the bureaucratic systems that feel impossible to change, it's easy to feel like you have absolutely no leverage in the world.
Oh, for sure.
But what Kalala, Lena, Bryn, and Eppo show us is that your routine is your leverage. The author makes peeling turnips and delivering mint paste feel like a high-stakes heist because the children are repurposing the very tools of their oppression into the instruments of their liberation.
They are, quite literally, craftsmen of escape. It's a deeply empowering socio-political message. Minos relies on brute force and the threat of violence to maintain control.
But the children rely on imagination, deep empathy for one another, and rigorous collaboration. They are exploiting the cracks in the tyrant's foundation.
But all of this careful, methodical plotting, the slow gathering of fire oil, the loosening of screws, the mapping of guard routes gets thrown into absolute hyperdrive because of one terrifying, unpredictable moment.
And this is exactly where the narrative tracks converge. The world of the palace and the world of the cottage, the humans and the monsters, magically and thematically collide. Let's trace this turning point.
The narrative convergence here is a masterclass in plotting. Let's look at the 2 separate tracks leading up to the climax. Back at the cottage on Misty Island, Medusa is stressed out of her mind.
She has taken on a massive, highly tedious tapestry commission that is draining her energy.
She is weaving these abstract geometric shapes, spiraling lines, and dead ends in a repetitive pattern. It's a maze.
And it's a special, highly classified order directly from the royal court of King Minos.
The irony is suffocating. Medusa, the supposed monster, is literally weaving the blueprint of the labyrinth that the king uses to slaughter innocents.
And Alara, her blind assistant, was kidnapped by those thugs in Athens while trying to buy the specific copper thread and aquamarine beads needed to finish this exact tapestry.
Exactly. The threads of fate are pulling everyone toward the palace. And remember that Cascade reveal, Alara is destined to be the future queen of Crete.
Right. Her kidnapping isn't just a side plot. It is the event that forces Medusa out of her isolation and sets the future queen on a collision course with the future king, Eppo.
Meanwhile, inside the palace, the children get a massive break. Eppo finds a dropped scroll on the servants' stairs.
It's a missive from Daedalus to an overseer foreman, complete with a heavy wax seal, an iron key, and a hand-drawn map of the unmapped sectors of the maze.
The letter mentions a harbor access gate hidden deep within the maze that leads outside the mountain directly to the seaport.
It's the final piece of the puzzle. It is their ticket out, they have the supplies, they have the guard routes, and now they have the map to the exit.
But before they can wait for the optimal night to execute their long-term plan, disaster strikes at a pre-games brunch.
King Minos is hosting 28 visiting dignitaries in the Grand Hall. He is holding court, mid-story, gesturing wildly with his arms.
Lena is serving wine. As she passes behind him, his arm swings back and violently clips the heavy crystal wine decanter she is holding.
What happens next seals her fate. Because you're these crazy reflexes, right?
Right, exactly. She just catches it perfectly. She twists, dips, and catches the heavy decanter midair before it shatters. It's a flawless recovery.
In fact, a few of the visiting nobles actually politely applaud her grace. But a single splash of dark red wine flicks upward from the spout and lands directly on King Minos's white silk sleeve.
The psychology of Minos in this moment is chilling. He doesn't care about her grace. He doesn't care that it was an accident caused by his own erratic movements.
He cares about his fragile ego. He cares that a filthy servant girl interrupted the climax of his story, drew the attention of his guests, and stole his spotlight.
The entire grand hall goes dead silent. Minos looks down at the stain, looks at Lena, and says, "You interrupt my story. You turn its climax into your own oafish performance."
And with a flick of his wrist, he sentences her to the maze. She is to be the first one pushed into the arena at noon the very next day. An appetizer for the beast before the main games begin.
Calla hears the news through the servant grapevine, and their entire timeline is instantly blown up.
The careful, patient planning is over. They have to move that night.
The stakes have shifted from a stealthy escape to a desperate rescue mission. They have to break into the legendary labyrinth, find Lena, and get out before the sun rises.
And the execution of this break-in is where all their daily chores and stolen items finally pay off. The pacing of the sequence is phenomenal.
They wait until midnight, when the palace is at its quietest.
Calla uses a bent hairpin to pop the lock on the laundry chute that Lena had spent weeks loosening. One by one, they plunge down the dark metal chute, sliding blindly through the walls of the palace.
Landing in the massive, foul-smelling canvas laundry bins in the sub-basement, they sneak toward the entrance of the unfinished wing.
Bryn takes the fire poppers they manufactured from Eppo's stolen alchemy oil and Lena's stolen linen, and he throws them down a side corridor.
The miniature explosions echo through the stone, drawing the single heavily armed guard away from the gate.
While the guard is investigating the noise, Calla uses Daedalus's dropped key to unlock the heavy iron gate. They cross a thick red line painted on the floor that explicitly says, "Absolutely do not cross," and they venture into the dark, unfinished maze.
They are terrified, their children walking into a slaughterhouse. Suddenly, they hear it.
A massive, booming, guttural roar echoing through the stone corridors, vibrating in their chests.
They creep forward, clutching their makeshift weapons, fully expecting to turn a corner and find a blood-soaked beast sitting on a pile of human bones.
Eppo is clutching a glass vial of highly concentrated sleep root, ready to throw it in a suicide play. Calla stumbles through an archway, screams, and comes face to face with Wally.
It is the greatest tension-breaking moment in the novel. Wally is not covered in blood.
He's standing in front of a full-length gold-leafed mirror, wearing a luxurious emerald green silk dressing gown, practicing his roaring technique to see how it echoes.
Kella drops to her knees, shrieking, "Please don't eat us!" And Wally physically recoils.
He clutches his silk lapels in absolute horror and says, "Eat you!" Heavens no, I've been vegan for years. I'm the Athens chapter co-chair of Broadway Fikes Beef.
Do you have any idea what human meat does to the digestive tract?
It completely, instantly shatters their conditioned understanding of the world. The terrifying mythology they have been fed their entire lives evaporates in a second.
Wally, seeing their terrified children, immediately shifts from a diva to a caretaker. He invites them into his secret dressing room, which is decorated like a high-end noble's drawing room.
Full of plush seating, intricate tapestries, and racks of elaborate costumes.
They makes them herbal tea, calms them down, and listens to their desperate story about Lena being thrown into the arena tomorrow.
And Wally immediately decides to help them. Because to Wally, this isn't an execution, it's a production, it's a logistical challenge. And he loves high-stakes drama.
He explains his whole operation to the kids, how he was essentially drafted by Minos after a vocal performance, how he uses the articulated mannequins and the sunberry jam to fake the deaths for the nobles watching through the iron grates above.
He formulates a master plan on the spot. He instructs Bryn and Eppo to use the vial of sleep root to drug the ale keg of the guards stationed at the rear pier gate.
He gives Kulla a rare Pelargonian doubloon from his personal stash and a highly specific passphrase. He tells her that when they get to the docks, they must find a captain named Soren Vale on a ship called the Wayward Gull.
The next day, during the Grand Games, Wally puts on the absolute performance of a lifetime. The arena is packed with cheering, bloodthirsty nobles.
Lena is violently shoved into the arena, legitimately terrified because she doesn't know the plan.
Wally explodes from the gates. He roars, he stomps, he charges, chasing her across the sand floor. But he is subtly, expertly driving her toward the far, shadowed wall.
Bryn and Eppo are waiting behind a hidden service door in that wall, disguised in oversized armor they stole from Wally's costume rack.
Wally makes the chase look incredibly violent and convincing to the king and the nobles watching from high above. He blocks their line of sight at the exact right moment, creating a theatrical illusion of a kill.
They think they're watching a brutal slaughter, but they are actually watching a highly choreographed, perfectly executed rescue mission.
The kids pull Lena through the hidden door in the split second. Wally blocks the view. They sprint down the secret tunnel to the pier, run right past the guards who are passed out from the drugged ale.
They flash the gold coin to Captain Soren, give the passphrase, and scramble aboard the Wayward Gull just as the ship pulls free of the docks. They escape.
If you step back and analyze this climax, you see how art and craftsmanship become the ultimate, triumphant tools of resistance against Minos.
Medusa weaponizes her craft to fund her independence and protect herself from hostile invaders. Wally weaponizes his acting and stagecraft to subvert the king's executions, saving lives while maintaining his own survival.
And the children weaponize their chores, their intimate knowledge of the palace's mundane systems, to break the chains of their captivity.
The thematic connection here is stunning. Think about the physical maze. The very labyrinth that Minos uses as a tool of ultimate oppression is being woven into a beautiful piece of art by Medusa on an island.
It is being accurately mapped by an illegitimate servant boy named Eppo.
And it is being turned into a stage play for a vegan's residency.
Minos sits on his marble throne, peeling grapes, thinking he is the one in absolute control, pulling all the strings. But he is completely oblivious. The artists and the workers, the people he deems beneath his notice, are actually the ones pulling the strings.
This is the core message Kenny C.H. is delivering. Tyranny, by its nature, is incredibly rigid. It relies entirely on brute force, fear, and top-down commands.
But creativity is fluid. Imagination, empathy, and collaboration allow marginalized people to adapt. And that's how you beat a tyrant. You don't out-muscle them, you out-create them, you bankrupt their economy of fear.
Okay, we need to take a breath and recap this incredible journey.
Yeah, we started with a Gorgon complaining about aquamarine beads while making macramé owls, and a vegan minotaur rehearsing musical numbers in a silk robe.
And we ended with enslaved children using kitchen supplies, stolen linen, and the architecture of their own oppression to pull off a daring rescue right under a king's nose.
It is a remarkable, deeply thoughtful reimagining of these classic tropes. The monsters aren't the villains. They are tragic, misunderstood beings striving for artistic expression.
The real monsters are the humans who choose cruelty for entertainment, profit, and ego.
And when you look at your own life, It is so easy to feel overwhelmed by the rigid structures around you, the systems that feel too big to fight.
But this story is a testament to the power of your unique skills. Your daily craftsmanship, your weird hobbies, the things you notice when no one else is paying attention, those are actually your greatest strengths.
Creativity and empathy are the ultimate tools of systemic resistance.
But before we wrap up this deep dive, we have to talk about the massive implications of that cast guide, because the kids escaping on the Wayward Gull is clearly just the prologue of a much larger saga.
Yes. Let's look at the seeds planted for the future. The kids escape to Pelagon's retreat, the land without kings. But the cast guy holds one final, earth-shattering secret that we barely touched on in the text.
There is a character named Jorgen. He is King Minos' legendary personal bodyguard.
He is described as a man built like a battering ram, a decorated war hero with a jagged scar running from his jaw down to his collarbone.
But Minos treats him terribly. He treats him like an obedient dog, constantly belittling him and forcing him to run petty errands, like going down to the stables to check on the Arabian stallions.
Jorgen silently hates his job. The text explicitly notes that the leash was starting to chafe, and the cast guide reveals his ultimate destiny.
It lists Jorgen as the legendary bodyguard who chooses the kingdom over the king.
Oh, that gives me absolute chills. He is going to turn on Minos. So I want to leave you with a thrilling realization to ponder on your own. This escape through the maze wasn't the end of the story. It was just the spark that lights the powder keg.
Think about the pieces moving on the board right now. We know Eppo, the courier, is eventually going to become King Aphonios.
We know Ilara, the blind flower seller who makes tea for Medusa, is destined to become the Queen of Crete. And we know Jorgen, the most lethal man in the palace, is going to betray his king.
It sets up an inevitable, epic confrontation. The marginalized are gathering their strength.
Exactly. How will a blind flower seller, a runaway stable boy, a theater kid minotaur, a macramé weaving gorgon, and a disgruntled legendary bodyguard eventually team up to tear down King Minos' gilded empire?
How do they transition from a desperate escape to a full-blown revolution? That is a story I cannot wait to read.
It promises to be a masterpiece of asymmetrical warfare on a grand kingdom-toppling scale.
Definitely.
So the next time you are wandering through a museum and you see one of those ancient Greek vases with the heroic human standing victorious over the vanquished beast, I want you to stop and ask yourself, who actually wrote this story? Who does this myth serve?
And what is the monster doing when the hero isn't looking?
Because they just might be knitting a sweater, practicing their scales, or quietly plotting to tear the whole system down. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep asking questions, keep leveraging your own daily craftsmanship, and never stop questioning the narratives you are handed. We'll see you next time.
That's this deep dive. If this is your first time with Monsters Maybe, the books are available in paperback and hardcover on Amazon and Walmart, free to read on Kindle Unlimited, and an audiobook on Spotify and Apple Books. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, follow the show so the next deep dive lands automatically. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe and ring the bell. A quick rating or review helps more than you'd think. We'll see you next time in the world of monsters. Maybe.
Read Monsters Maybe by Wilson H. Bard, available at Walmart and on Amazon. Or read it for free with Kindle Unlimited.